Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So this is a recording on chapter 6, correction of error. Okay, so before we begin, okay, let's, as usual, look at the learning objective of this chapter. Okay, so at the end of this lesson, you should be able to identify and explain errors that affect and do not affect trial balance agreement. Okay, firstly, you have to be able to identify what are the errors and also be able to explain those errors. Okay, and number two, okay, correct the errors to get the correct trial balance agreement. Not just you should be able to explain those errors, but at the end of today's lesson, you will also need to be able to correct errors that we found in our transactions. Okay, so let's begin with the introduction. Okay, refer to your textbook, page 115. Okay, so basically in the previous chapter, we have learned how to prepare a trial balance, right? And trial balance basically is to prepare, is prepared basically to ensure that our debit is equal to our credit. In other words, trial balance would function as a checking mechanism. Okay, if for example we did any mistake in our recording process, and trial balance itself is a list of accounts with their balances. Okay, so whenever we have a total debit equals to the total credit, okay, okay, the keyword here is we could assume that everything could be correct, right? So whenever we have unbalanced trial balance, okay, the debit somehow does not equal to the credit, it means that definitely there is error, okay, somewhere in our recording process. But at the same time, although I said earlier, if the debit equals to the total credit, okay, it could be correct, but at the same time, it's not a guarantee. Why? Because there are some errors that can result to a balance trial balance. Okay, for example, we prepare everything, we record everything, and after we prepare the trial balance, we find out that okay, the total debit equals to the total credit, but at the same time, there could be errors contained in the accounting process. Okay, maybe there are certain transactions that being recorded wrongly on the debit and credit side. So in this case, the debit and credit will still be the same. Okay, so today we are going to discuss what are those errors. Okay, so let's look at okay, firstly, let's look at the steps how to identify any errors. Okay, so first is to recalculate the debit and credit in the trial balance and double check for any addition error. Now, this is very normal, especially if when you prepare your trial balance, the debit does not equal to the credit. So firstly, before you do anything else, okay, we need to recalculate. Okay, take your calculators and recalculate everything. Okay, there could be when you calculated everything earlier in the first try, maybe you mispress some button. Okay, so in this case, if for example you mispress some button, recalculating everything could give us the correct balance. But if let's say, for example, after you recalculate everything, okay, and your trial balance still unbalanced, so what should we do? Okay, number two is that we have to verify that all ledgers have been posted to the trial balance. Okay, because here we are working with the trial balance, right? Okay, so when we are working to the trial balance, look at those balances. Where do we get those balances? Make sure all account balances have been transferred correctly. Okay, meaning to say even in transferring the balances, we do not commit any mistake. And what if, let's say, after we check all the balances in the T accounts to the trial balance and everything still the same thing? Okay, so what's next? Step number three is that, okay, look at the differences. Okay, divide the difference between debit and credit by two. Usually, okay, if we do this, we could find certain transactions that have this amount in their transaction. And usually this is the transaction that we need to pay attention to. Maybe there is some mistake in recording. Okay, maybe the debit, okay, somehow is recorded into credit side, or maybe we do not record it at all. Okay, so just find these differences between the debits and credit. Okay, and then recheck ledger entries against their respective journal entries. You know, if step number 1, 2, 3 doesn't work, okay, we need to do a manual rechecking. Okay, whatever entries that we have in our ledgers, they all come from journals. right? So in this case, okay, look back, look at our journals and make sure when we transfer from the journal to the ledger, we transfer them correctly. And if let's say that doesn't work, then we have to do this. Okay, a manual check. Okay, at all of our journal entries, all of the general ledger or the special journal, sorry, the general journal, special journal, cash book, we have to check against their transactions. Okay, look back at the question, look back at the source document, and make sure that we transfer the information into those journals correctly. All right. Um, yeah, and in addition to that, checking process need to be organized and systematic. Whenever you have done the checking, okay, just do a tick, okay, so that you don't have to look at it twice or more than that. Okay, this is especially true later on when you work on your project. Okay, few times in the past already students they have prepared everything, okay, but somehow they cannot find the error. Okay, if you follow these steps systematically, okay, you will find those errors. All right, now let's move on to the classification of error, the main focus of this topic. Okay, firstly, okay, we have two types of errors that we're going to discuss today. Okay, number one is error affecting trial balance agreement. Okay, why do we call it as errors affecting trial balance agreement? Is because when we have this error, the debit and credit in the trial balance won't be the same amount. Okay, they have different amount. Okay, that's why we call it as errors affecting trial balance agreement. And secondly is trial errors that do not affect trial balance agreement. So in this case, this is the tricky one. Okay, because even if we commit this error, our trial balance will show the equal debit and credit, meaning to say we may not be aware that there is an error. So this is a bit tricky, all right? Maybe sometimes, you submit your work, you thought that you could get full marks because everything is balanced, right? But then when you receive back the result, okay, you notice that, okay, actually there are a few errors, okay? So this is the one that we're going to discuss here. Okay, now, firstly, let's look at the errors affecting trial balance agreement. Debit does not equal to credit. Okay. Number one, we have what we call as transposition error. Okay. Number two is slide error. Number three is entries entered on only one side. Okay, let's look at this one by one. Okay, firstly is transposition error. From the name itself, you can see the name. Okay, it has something with position here, and also it is transposed. What does it mean? Transpose. Transpose literally means, okay, this is the literal meaning. Okay, the location is transposed. Here we're talking about two digits in the amount, they switch their position. Okay, that is transpose. Okay, the position are switched. Okay, for example, here, let's say the transaction is pay wages with check RM457. Look at the number 457. But when we record, okay, assume that we record the debit side incorrectly, only one side. In this case, only the debit side. Instead of 457, we record it as 475. The digit 5 and 7s are transposed, becoming 475. Okay, that's why we call it as transposition error. In case you're wondering, so how do I understand this? Okay, you just make sense of the name, you just make sense of the term, and if let's say you could not do that, what you need to do is you just memorize the whole thing. Okay, so and then, let's look at the example, a graphical explanation of this. Okay, let's say, okay, this is the right entry. This is the right entry on the credit side. In this transaction, we assume that transposition error only happen only on one side. In this case, debit. So as you can see here, the credit side is correct. Okay, 457, but the debit side is wrong, 475. So because of this, of course, our trial balance won't be balanced because the amount that we record here, debit is equal to credit. It's not equal to credit, right? So of course, it will not be balanced, our trial balance. So how do we correct this error? Basically, we have to credit wages account with the differences. Okay. At the end of the process, basically, we want our wages to have a debit of 457. So to do this, 475 divide minus 457, we get extra 18 ringgit. We have to exclude this 18 ringgit from the account. So in this case, wages account is debit. We want to reduce the amount. It should be credited. Okay. For this step, the correction, you cannot memorize the correction. Why? Because it depends on the question. Okay. If let's say, for example, in this case, we overstate our expenses, so we have to credit. But if let's say the error results to us understating the expenses, meaning to say, let's say we record it, supposedly we record 457, maybe we record it as um maybe 175. Sorry, that's another error. Okay. Let's say the correct entry is 475, but we record it as 457. So we have to add. In this case, we have to debit. Okay. So in this case, the correction itself, you cannot memorize the step. Instead, you have to look at the question, okay, and think logically and record accordingly. All right. Okay. So that's number one. Okay. Number two, we have slide error. Okay. The definition of slide. What is slide? Slide means, sliding door, it slides, right? In Malay, we call it as meluncu, it moves. Okay, it moves. Okay. So in this case, we are talking about the decimal point. What moves? The decimal point. The decimal point slid to the wrong place. Okay. Example here, the transaction is pay wages with check 183 ringgit and 45 cent. Okay, this is the correct amount. I want you to look at the decimal point here. This is the decimal point. Okay, between digit 3 and digit 4. Right. Imagine this decimal point slid to the right. Okay. It moved to this position between 4 and 5. How much it becomes? It turns into 1,834 ringgit and 50 cent. Okay. So basically the decimal points move to another place. Okay. So what is the implication? This would be the implication. Okay. Let's say we record the wages account correctly. This is the correct entry. But when we record in the bank account, we assume that this error happened. Okay. Only one side of the account, only the credit side in this case. Okay. So that's why our trial balance won't be balanced. In case you're wondering, so what if let's say slight error happens in both debit and credit? So in that case, definitely our trial balance will be balanced. Okay, but there are still error. Okay, so how do we correct this transaction? In this transaction, the wages account has been recorded correctly. So there is no worry here. But our bank account, we have credit more than it's supposed to be. Okay, so in this case, to offset the amount, okay, to add back the amount, we have to debit the differences. Okay, so this is the way. Okay, we find the differences and we record debit. Sorry for the typo. It shouldn't be bank here. It should be wages. All right, it should be wages here. In the bank account, it should be wages, debit 1651.05. Okay, next is the last one is the entries are entered on only one side. What does it mean? Literally means as it sounds. When we record the transaction, we only record either on debit side or credit side. Only one side. That's it. Okay, that's it. So because of this, our trial balance won't be balanced. Okay, example here. On 6th January, purchase supplies RM200 with cash. So what we do is we only record in the cash account. We forgot to record in the supplies account. Okay, so this is how we record it. In cash, we record supplies, credit here. Okay, but in supplies account, we somehow forgot to record it. Okay, this can happen especially in manual accounting system where we do the recording by ourselves. But usually in computerized accounting system, this does not happen because the moment we enter, the system will ask us to fill in the debit and credit account. Okay, so those are the errors not affecting trial balance agreement. Okay, we have transposition error, we have a slight error, and then we have entries recorded only on one side of the account. Three types of errors. Okay, next, errors not affecting trial balance agreement. Okay, for this one, we have more than three. Okay, number one, we have error of omission. Number two, we have error of commission. Number three, we have error of principal. Number four, we have error of original entry. Number five, we have compensating error. And number six, we have error of complete reversal of entries. And lastly, we have transposition error. The transposition error exactly is the same as the errors affecting trial balance, the one that we just discussed earlier, but the transposition happened at both sides debit and credit. Okay, we will revisit this again. Okay, now let's look at the first one, error of omission. Okay, what is error of omission? It literally means omit. Okay, the word omission there, okay, derived from the word omit. What does omit means? Omit means being left out. Okay, being left out. So when we talk about transaction being left out, it means that we do not record the transaction at all. So if we do not record the transaction, our trial balance won't be balanced, will not be unbalanced. Okay. Imagine we have 20 transactions, we don't record all, we omit everything. Will our trial balance be unbalanced? No, right? Because both sides debit will be zero, credit will be zero, but still balance, right? So in this case, whenever we commit error of omission, it doesn't affect the trial balance agreement, okay? But although the debit is equal to the credit, the trial balance is still contains some mistake, okay? It depends on the number of mistakes that we have, okay? Next, example here. Pay rent with cash 1,000 ringgit. So what is the double entry here? Debit rent, credit cash, 1,000 ringgit. What do we record? Nothing. We don't record at all. That's why we call it as error of omission. We don't record the transaction. Okay. So this is what the account would look like. Would looks like. You know, you see, there is no entry at all being made. No debit and no credit. Okay. Next. So for the correction, okay, firstly, you have to remember all correction need to be recorded in general journal. That is very important. Okay. And then after we record in the general journal, we have to post to the respective ledgers. Okay. Example here, this is the general journal. Okay. You see, okay, debit rent, credit cash. Okay. This is the amount. Okay. Basically, the double entry is only to correct the mistake. The mistake here is that we do not record this transaction, rent 1,000, cash 1,000. So correct that, we have to record this transaction. Okay, so the narration would be correction of error, error of omission. Okay, you have to state the types of error. Okay, especially in exam. Okay, because all of these uh we have allocates all the marks, okay, for the narration, for the name of the accounts, for the debit and credit amounts as well. Okay. Now, this is the general journal. Step number 2 is to post in their ledger. Okay, what ledgers are these? Rent and cash. Okay, so it will look like this. Okay, rent, debit 1,000 ringgit. See here, rent is debit in the general journal. In the accounts, the rent should be recorded on the debit side. Cash, credit 1,000 ringgit. Okay, see, it reflects the general journal. All right. Okay, next. Okay, number 2, error of commission. Okay, so what is error of commission? Okay, it is basically refers to transactions that is recorded in the wrong account of the same category or class. Okay, wrong account, but same category. For example, asset. Okay, asset account. The category is asset, but the wrong account would be, for example, we are talking about trade receivable. Okay, usually this error happens in subsidiary ledger. Trade receivable, okay. Example, we sold goods on credit to Salman, 500 ringgit. Instead of recording to Salman, we record the amount, the transaction into Salma, okay, into Salma's account instead of Salman's account. Okay, so it would looks like this. Okay, the sales is wrong. Okay, Salma, and here we have the wrong account altogether. Salma, 500 ringgit. Okay, but because they are both, Salman and Salma are both trade receivable, our account is still be balanced. Okay, so this is a problem that we may overlook. Okay, if we don't check properly. Okay, so how to correct this? Okay, how to correct this error? This one, right? Okay, obviously this 500 ringgit is debit to Salma. We have to take it out. How to take it out? Okay, we have to credit Salma. You see that? Credit Salma 500 ringgit. At the same time, we make the correct record, debit Salman 500 ringgit. Okay, and don't forget the narration, correction of error, error of commission. Okay, so this is basically the correction. Okay, credit Salma's account to zero the account because Salma shouldn't have this 500 ringgit. Okay, so we have to zero this account. So now we have done this. Salma's account becomes zero balance, right? And Salman, this is the correct amount. Salman now has 500 ringgit outstanding. All right. Now, another example of error of commission. I would say in exams, questions on error of commission focus on trade receivable and trade payable subsidiary ledgers. Okay. But if, let's say, for example, purchase of equipment being recorded into furniture account, that is also considered as error of commission. Same classification, non-current asset, but wrong account. Okay, equipment and furniture, for example. Okay, so you have to remember this because I think in the textbook, all examples uses trade receivable and trade payable subsidiary ledgers. All right. Now, next, error of principle. So for the error of principle, okay, it is a transaction recorded in the wrong category of accounts. Remember earlier, error of commission, correct category, wrong account. But here, wrong category. Okay, what category? Asset, liability, equity. Okay, that is the difference between error of principle and error of commission. Error of commission, correct category, but wrong account. But error of principle, wrong category altogether. Now, purchase equipment, 800 ringgit by cash. Equipment is an asset, but when we record this transaction, we record it into purchase account, which is purchase is an expenses. So an asset is recorded into an expenses account. That is the wrong category, although both are debit. Okay, but wrong category. So this is error of principle. If, for example, purchase of equipment recorded into furniture account, that is error of commission. Okay, correct category, wrong account. Okay, next. So this is how the error would looks like. Okay, purchases shouldn't have any amount here. Okay, somehow we record it here. Okay, cash, credit, purchases, the particular is wrong here, but here the whole thing is wrong. Okay, so how do we correct this error? Again, the step is always the same. Record the transaction in general journal, and then we transfer into the ledgers. Example here, this would be the journal entry. Okay, debit equipment, because this is the correct account. Equipment, purchase of equipment, debit equipment, credit purchases. Why credit purchases? Because this is the error. We want to take out this 800 ringgit from the account. Okay, so we have to credit. Okay, you see here. Okay, this is the error, the right colored. Okay, and we have to take out this 800 ringgit to zero the account. Okay, so this is basically the transfer from the journal to the ledger. All right, now next, we have error of original entry. Okay, for the error of original entry, actually, it is very simple. It is about the amount. Correct account, but wrong amount. Okay, wrong amount. The focus is on the amount. Okay, let's look at the example here. Purchase furniture on credit, 5,000 ringgit. The amount is 5,000, but somehow we only record it as 500 ringgit. It's a bit different than transposition. Transposition error, we switch the location. Okay, the location of the digits. But here, the whole amount could be wrong. Okay, so in this case, okay, you see, debit furniture. The debit and credit is correct already. Debit furniture, credit account payable, but the wrong amount. All right, so how to correct this? Again, we start with making the journal entry. Okay, in this case, okay, again, for this one, this you cannot memorize the step. You have to find the difference between the correct amount and the wrong amount. Okay, and depending whether you have to add more or you have to deduct from the account, record accordingly. In this case, we have to add more, add 4,500 more. Okay, so we debit furniture credit account payable. Okay, so this is how we are going to record it. This is how our account would looks like. Okay, in our furniture account, first we have the wrong entry, 500 ringgit, but we don't do anything about this. We just make another record. Sorry, by the way, the particular is wrong. In the furniture account, it is account payable, not furniture. All right, it should be account payable here. Okay, next, compensating error. Okay, compensating. When we talk about compensating error, the word compensating itself, it means that they compensate each other. two or more errors that cancel out each other. They cover up each other. For example, here, cash sales of 430 ringgit. The correct amount is 430. Was credited as 480. The debit side is correct. Okay, debit side is correct. But the credit is wrong. This is the first transaction. The second transaction, credit purchase of 200 was debited as 250. The credit side is correct, but now the debit is wrong. What is the possibility? What is the probability? You know, in real world, if you're talking about real world, we have two different transactions that somehow each of those transactions contains error that cancel out each other. I would say in real life, this would be almost an impossible error. Okay, but of course, here we're talking about, we want to ask you questions in exam. Anything can be asked, right? Okay, so in this case, okay, so this is the error. Okay, the cash transaction one, cash sales 430, okay, is recorded correctly on the debit side, okay, but credited wrongly. Okay, you see here, wrong amount. Whereas transaction number two, okay, credit purchase 200 ringgit, the credit side is correct, but the debit is wrong. But both errors compensate each other. You see, over by 50 on the credit side, and here over by 50 on the debit side. So at the end of the day, our trial balance is balanced. But even though it is balanced, we still need to correct the error. Okay, so how? We simply deduct the excess. Okay, in this case, debit sales 50, credit purchase 50. You see here, okay? The sales is over by 50, so we have to take out 50 here, debit 50, and credit purchase by 15. Okay, we have to take out from purchase account 50 ringgit. Okay, so that would be the, yeah, this one. Okay, this would be the correction. All right. Okay, next. Next is error of complete reversal of entries. Now, what is error of complete reversal of entries? We reverse the entries. What do we reverse? Debit and credit. Okay, it is recorded correct account, correct amount. Okay, but the problem is now wrong side of each account. The account that we should debit, we record it on the credit side. The account that we should credit, we record it on the debit side. Okay, example here, cash sale. When we talk about cash sale, debit cash, credit sales. But here, we debit sales, credit cash. It is reverse. Okay, the debit and credit is reverse. Okay, so both transactions are recorded in the wrong side, which double up the error. Okay, so in this case, it should be here 430 credit, and cash should be debit, right? 430. Okay, so how do we correct this? To correct the complete reversal of entries, for this one, you have to memorize. Okay, we should record on the correct side, but for the amount, it should be doubled. Okay, for example, the original amount is 430, but now debit cash 860. 860 ringgit comprise to 430. Okay, the first 430 is to cancel the error. The second 430 is to correct the transaction correctly. It is to record the transaction correctly. Okay, so for complete reversal of entry, you have to double the amount. If you don't double the amount, basically you just remove the error, but you haven't record the transaction yet. Okay, so you have to double the amount. Okay, this one, yeah. The first 430 is to nullify the error on credit side. Okay, this error 430 is to cancel, zero this amount. And another 430 is to record the transaction correctly. All right. Similarly, for sales account here on the credit side, okay, we have to double the amount. Okay. And lastly, we have transposition error. Again, when we talk about transposition error, we are talking about how the digits in the amount transpose. Okay. The position is switched. Okay, example here, cash sales 715 ringgit was recorded as 751, both debit and credit. Okay, both debit and credit. Earlier, when we talk about transposition error in the beginning of the session, okay, we are talking about one debit or one credit, either one of the side. But here, okay, we are talking about both sides. Okay, example here. Okay, so this is how we need to record. Okay, now it is overstated. Okay, this is the wrong amount, by the way. Debit cash 751, credit sales 751. Okay, while the actual amount is 715, 715. Okay, so how to correct this error? Again, we record in the general journal debit sales 36, credit cash 36. Why debit sales? Because here in this case, we over record. So we have to minus. To minus from sales, sales is credit account. To minus, we need to debit. To minus from cash, we have to credit. Okay. So this is the transaction. Okay. You see here? Okay. After we calculate this, 751 minus 36, we will get the correct amount. 715, 715 ringgit. All right. Next. Okay. There's an exercise here. Okay. Sales to Yusof for 800 ringgit was credited to Yusof account for 800 ringgit. So what is the error? The error here is, okay, same class of account, both are asset, both are trade receivable, okay, both are trade receivable, but wrong account. Same classification, but wrong account. So this is error of commission, okay? And how to correct the error? To correct the error, basically, we debit. Wow, actually, we have a lot of error here. Okay, let me show you. Uh, I don't have the. Okay, there are multiple errors here. Okay, I'm not sure if we would ever ask this question in. Okay, I'm not sure, but this would make an interesting question because it contains multiple error. Okay, let me show you. Oh no. Okay, now sales to Yusuf. Okay, was credited to Yusuf. I'm not sure if I pronounce that you could hear the difference. Okay. So okay, I'm going to first make the correct record. Okay. Okay, firstly is sales. Sec, firstly is Yusuf. Secondly is sales. Right. Yusuf. And then we have sales. And now here we have Yusuf. Okay. The correct entry should be debit Yusuf. Sales 800. Right. And credit sales. Yusuf 800. So this is the correct entry. Okay. But the error is instead of recording to Yusuf, we record to Yusuf. Okay. But instead of debit, we credit. Okay. We credit. So sales 800. And if we have credit in Yusuf, the sales here would be debited 800. So what is the error? Error number one is error of commission. Okay. Between Yusuf and Yusuf. Okay. Both are trade receivable. Okay. But wrong account. Okay. And second error is error of complete reversal of entries. Why? Because here the debit and credit are switched with each other. Okay. So this is actually a trick question. Okay. A trick question because okay, instead of containing one error, this error, there are two errors here. Okay, I'm not sure if we ever ask this in final exam, but I think you should be prepared for it. Okay, there are a few other exercises. Okay, you can try later on. Okay, this is not in the textbook. I don't think so. Okay. Yeah, you can try the question later. Okay, now in the textbook, refer to page 116. It's not on the slide somehow. I apologize for that. We have suspense account. Okay, the use of suspense account is to correct the errors that affect trial balance agreement. Okay, let me show you how to do it. Okay, now um refer to the textbook. Okay, I don't think, yeah, there is no suspense account in the textbook in the visual representation of the suspense account. Okay, okay. Firstly, you have to remember. Okay, suspense account is both debit and credit. Okay, it can be either debit account or credit account depending on the error. Okay, let's look at the example on page 116. Okay, in preparing the trial balance, the account clerk found the total debit. Okay, here debit is uh 10,500 ringgit, whereas total credit is 10,700 ringgit. And it found out that um yeah, there is no information on the amount. Okay, on the error. Okay, let's see. There is one transaction that we forgot to record here. Okay, there is one transaction that we forgot to record. Okay, so in this case, okay, the balance. Okay, in this case, okay, you see here, um, the debit is less 200 ringgit than the credit. The error is here. For example, let's say we found out cash purchase, okay, of RM 200 ringgit was not recorded in purchase account. Okay, so in this case, if this happen, of course, the debit will be less than credit by 200 ringgit. Okay, so now we know that the error is 200 ringgit is missing. So we open balance BD on debit side 200 ringgit. Okay, and how do we correct this error? Okay, to correct this error, we have to record. Look at the transaction here. We have to make the record. Debit purchase 200 ringgit, right? So if we debit purchase 200 ringgit, okay, by the way, okay, let's put this somewhere else. Okay, okay. Now, by the way, this is our trial balance. Our trial balance is not balanced. Okay. And if we want to prepare our financial statement, we would have to balance our trial balance first. Okay. Now, when we found this error, we have to make this double entry. All right. In our trial balance now, there is an item called suspense account. Okay. And now, when we want to correct this, it's called double entry. What does double entry means? Every accounting entry must have at least one debit, one credit. We have the debit here. So what's the credit? The credit would be credit suspense account. Okay, credit suspense account by the same amount, 200 ringgit. So in this case, suspense account, you see here, suspense, in the suspense account, it is on the credit side. Okay, 200 ringgit. And what is the double entry? The double entry would be purchase. Okay, so this is basically how we record it. All right. Initially, our suspense account is at the debit side, 200 ringgit. Okay, so balance BD is 200 ringgit. Now, we cannot have amount in suspense account because having amount in suspense account means there is an error. So we have to zero the suspense account. In this case, how to zero this? We have to credit. So here, this is the credit record in the suspense account. What's the particular? We found out the purchase account was not recorded properly. So we debit purchase. Okay, so this is correct. And later on in our trial balance, this suspense account will be zero. Instead, we will have our purchase account increased by 200 ringgit. So in this case, the total in our trial balance will be the same amount. Okay, 10,700 and 10,700. Okay, I hope this is clear how to use suspense account. Actually, in the textbook, there is a question on suspense account, page um 131, question 6. Okay, I want you to try question 6. We will discuss question 6 in our next class. All right, try question 6, page 131. Show the journal entries, but at the same time, I want you to create suspense account. Okay, open suspense account and at the same time show the journal entries. Okay, we will discuss this question in our next class. Okay, so that's all. Okay, before I end the recording, we just want to do a quick check if I miss anything. I don't think so. Okay, everything is recorded already. Okay, everything is covered. Okay, so that's all. If you have any question, you may ask in the WhatsApp group or you may also comment under the video here. Okay, so thank you. All the best. Okay, if you have anything, you may ask.